welcome to this edition of the Native News Update on this Tuesday, December 28th. I'm your host for today's program, Paul DeMain. Many of the stories read here can also be found at our website at IndianCountryNews.com, and here are some of the news stories from the day from the Associated Press and other Native news sources. In Fluent Cree, the new top Mountie in Saskatchewan says he's very pleased to have been given this work. RCMP Chief Superintendent Russ Marasti, who is a member of the Lac-La-Rangie Indian Band in northern Saskatchewan, has taken over as the commanding officer of F Division, becoming the first First Nations person to lead an RCMP division in the force's history. Marasti joined the RCMP in 1976. He remembers being one of the only two First Nations cadets in his troop at Depot Division, the RCMP's training academy in Regina. Marasti says he's humbly learned to accept that he's become a role model for the other First Nations people. He's proud of the force, too, and the advances it has made in recruiting more First Nations people since he joined the force some 34 years ago. The largest mass execution in U.S. history occurred 148 years ago when 38 Dakota warriors were hung from a single scaffold in Mankato, Minnesota during December. The shock waves of that mass execution still reverberate today among the Dakota people. A new documentary film remembers the 38 and also a group of Dakota who ride on horseback each year at this time of the year to Mankato to commemorate the execution that occurred on December 26, 1862. The U.S.-Dakota War played out along several all-too-familiar themes of U.S. history, broken treaties, and unfulfilled promises. The war started in August of 1862, and when it was over 6 weeks later, hundreds of Indians, as settlers and soldiers, were dead along the Minnesota River Valley. Filmmaker Silas Haggerty said his introduction to the war came 5 years ago. Dakota 38 documents the ride to Mankato in 2008. It was a memorable trek filled with blizzards, but also warm greetings from small-town residents all along the way. The conflict began over broken promises of food and other goods that the United States government made the Dakota in exchange for land. When it was over, hundreds of Dakota fighters were arrested and sentenced to death. After pleas from Bishop Henry Whipple and others urging leniency, President Abraham Lincoln spared most of the accused except for the 38 that were eventually hung. 2 people are dead and another was seriously injured after a head-on collision in northern Wisconsin. Ashland County, Wisconsin Sheriff John Kovach says the accident was reported at 3:23 p.m. on Christmas Day on the Red Cliff Chippewa Reservation in northern Wisconsin. He identified the 2 people who passed away as 22-year-old Courtney Green and 21-year-old William Jones, both of Odena on the Bad River Reservation. The Daily Press of Ashland reported December 26 that one person who has not yet been identified was hospitalized in serious to critical condition with unspecified injuries. Deputies are still investigating that accident. California's largest tribe is seeking thousands of acres of the state's national parks to build eco-lodges, gift shops, and water taxis that travel into the backcountry along the Klamath River. The Los Angeles Times reports that Yurok Tribal officials want Representative Mike Thompson of Helena to propose legislation that would give them 1,200 acres of Redwood National Park, 1,200 acres of redwood stands in the Six Rivers National Forest, and Redding Rock. Thompson hasn't signed off on the bill just yet. The tribe says it wants to build a park that meets the highest environmental and cultural standards, and their master plan creates a national scenic highway and a national marine sanctuary. The tribe has lived along the rugged coast stretching from Mendocino County to Oregon for centuries, but lost much of its land base after a reservation was established in 1855. The boundaries of the Yurok Reservation were redrawn by legislation in 1988, giving the tribe a slice of foggy coastal land, but the transfer was eventually removed by senators who said it was far too controversial. The retirement of the University of North Dakota's Fighting Sioux nickname has been voted North Dakota's top sports story for 2010. The survey of broadcast and print members of the Associated Press picked the nickname issue over North Dakota State's run through the Division I FCS football playoffs. The long-standing issue of the UND nickname came to a head this year when a court ruling upheld the Board of Higher Education's authority to retire the logo at any time it wanted to. The Warm Springs Reservation has a new police chief, a man who spent most of his career in the FBI. The bulletin reports that Stan Suenaga, originally of Los Angeles, will oversee a department of about 100 people on the Warm Springs Indian Reservation. In addition to police work, he's in charge of the fire department, parole and probation, tribal prosecutors, and defense attorneys and other crime victims services. And don't forget that we're going to put on that live stream coming up here on Friday, December 31st, New Year's, starting at 1 o'clock on the Menominee Indian Reservation. And then later on, 7 o'clock that evening, we should have the Lakudere powwow, New Year's Eve powwow, to join in on. Also, in the IndianCountryTV.com library is a 1.2-hour compilation of the John Graham murder trial. For those people who are looking at each one of the news segments we did, go there and check it out. And that is the latest roundup of news from Indian Country on this edition of the Native News Update. We want to thank you all for joining in. Come back again soon. Miigwech.